The band were best known at the time for their gimmick of having two drummers, and are now they're best remembered for being fronted by a twatty-wigged paedophile. Turn off the...
At first glance, Watkins appeared to be nothing more than a typical rock star. He grew up as a good-natured kid under the guidance of a Baptist minister and was renowned as the frontman of the highly successful band The Lost Prophets. However, beneath the surface looked a sinister, manipulative, and pure evil human being who used his fame and influence to exploit the vulnerable individuals for his own perverse pleasure. Despite the severity of his crimes, Watkins was able to continue preying on his young victims for an extended period of time, thanks in large part to the police incompetence and outright laziness. His actions were so horrible that he was permanently banned from all music platforms and ultimately sentenced to a lengthy prison term, where he'll spend nearly the rest of his life. Watkins was born on July 30th, 1977 in Wales. As a child, he was known to be creative and outgoing, with a talent for music and passion for performing. He was a straight-A student, a talented musician, and the stepson of a Baptist minister. His teenage years, Watkins developed a passion for music and formed a thrash metal band called Public Disturbance with future Lost Prophets band member Mike Lewis. However, the band was short-lived and Watkins was cited as being relentless with his goal of becoming a musician, and not only that, becoming a superstar. Watkins formed another band with another future member, Lee Gaze, and ultimately led to the creation of the now infamous Lost Prophets in 1997. Originally, Watkins was actually a drummer, but their newly formed band, the Lost Prophets, couldn't find a frontman, so that's when Watkins decided to switch from being the drummer to now being the frontman. Lost Prophets began touring in South Wales and saw success early on, which inevitably led to being noticed by the record label Visible Noise. Following huge reviews from both Kerrang! And Metal Hammer magazine, Lost Prophets started gaining mainstream publicity, headlining their own shows and even supporting bands such as Linkin Park. The band's true breakout moment was the release of their second album in 2004, Start Something, which sold 2.5 million copies worldwide and even sold almost 900,000 in the US, which was massive considering every aspiring band from the UK's goal was to break in the US market. They even had album reach at #1 on the UK album charts. The band seemed to be on top of the world for the following years, with Watkins leading the front line as the charismatic frontman who all the women seemed to love. In these early years, Watkins was actually straight edge, which means he never drank or did drugs because he wanted to give the best performance to his fans. The band toured some more, performed at huge festivals such as Glastonbury in the UK, and even played gigs with Metallica, My Chemical Romance, and Slipknot. They were one of the most successful bands to come out of Wales in recent years. The Lost Prophets seemed to be an unstoppable force, but little did the world know Watkins was leading a secret and dark double life. He was one of the worst child predators to ever exist, with a crime spree that ended in 2012 when he was charged with 13 child sex offenses and the attempted rape of a 10-month-old baby. So how did this seemingly normal rock star become one of the worst child predators ever to exist? In the beginning, Watkins never really drank or did drugs, but as his fame grew, he started diving more and more into heavy drugs. He would also have girls that were fans come backstage after the shows, and some of them looked a little young. The rest of the band just sort of ignored it, as Watkins always had his own dressing room separate from the rest of the band, so the band never knew exactly what was going on there. His band got increasingly concerned with his drug use, and it finally came to a head in April 2012 when they played a show and Watkins forgot the words to his own songs and sang it terribly. The way the bassist puts it, "I've never been so embarrassed in my life as playing that show." He didn't move for the whole set and sung the words wrong. This led to the band staging an intervention with Watkins, telling him that if he didn't clean up his act, he would be fired. They were extremely frustrated with him following this performance and even considered disbanding entirely as a result of it. Watkins checked into rehab during a 2-month break in the band's touring schedule. After the break, the band thought things were going good and Watkins was singing better than ever. Then one day on Warped Tour, Watkins leaves after a show and disappears to do drugs. The next day they have a show at 2 p.m. and Watkins tells the bands he will be late, so they push the show to 5 p.m. But Watkins never shows, so the band was forced to use their friend Jamie Oliver for vocals. Needless to say, the band was pissed. After the show, the bassist went back to the tour bus and then sees Watkins sitting there, and he got so mad that he started punching him in the face. and actually left bruises all over his face, and so he had that the remainder of the tour. So I come off stage livid, go on the bus, Ian's on the bus, and I'm like, nice one. Then I black out, and next thing I know, I'm laying punches into his face for 10 seconds or maybe 10 minutes, I don't know. And I'm a big boy compared to him. For the next 3 weeks, he has black eyes, cuts on his face, and I'm feeling horrible about the whole thing. But all this would pale in comparison to what was about to be unearthed. In December of 2012, Watkins was arrested for charges of conspiracy to rape a baby. Yes, you heard that right, a baby, as in an infant under 1 year old, as well as possession and distribution of indecent images of children. He was also charged with encouraging other individuals to abuse a child. Watkins also had 2 female accomplices who had also been involved in the abuse. They were arrested and charged alongside with him. One of the worst parts was the police knew about this for 4 years prior, in 2008, and they did nothing. If they would have just done something, they would have saved all these children from all the abuse that Ian Watkins did. This next stuff is actually pretty gross and disturbing. There's more vile stuff in the court documents, but I would not recommend reading those. I'm just going to give you kind of an overall timeline of what happened, and I would not suggest reading them as it's something I would probably like to forget. It all started in late 2006 when Watkins meets a woman named Joanne online through a sex chat. They would meet up and do a lot of drugs and have drug-filled sex sessions. Then in 2007, Watkins tells her how he had slept with and urinated on a 16-year-old fan of his band, among a stream of other similar offenses. At first, Joanne thought it was just the drugs talking and didn't take him serious. In December of 2008, Joanne reported that the singer had confessed to her that he had given a child cocaine and touched the child inappropriately. Watkins also sent her an indecent photo of a child. Although Joanne went to the police, no officer visited the alleged victim or their parents.
He began telling me about all these 14-year-old fans that he loved to take the virginity of, and then it just got worse and worse, and then he would start telling me things about he wanted to get me pregnant so that he could rape our daughter.
After their investigation in May of 2009, it was determined that there was insufficient evidence to support the allegations. The police just said that Joanne was a nut job and thought of her as some crazed fan. At this point, Joanne broke it off with Watkins, but she kind of still remained with him just because she wanted to gather more evidence because the police weren't listening to her. In March of 2010, the police are informed about Watkins once again. This time, he has images of boys and girls around the age of 8 on his computer and expressed a desire to engage in sexual activities with children. Additional reports claim that Watkins was selling drugs to minors to pay for his heroin and crystal meth habit and smuggled drugs into the country in his cavities when traveling with the lost profits. In August of 2010, it was claimed that Watkins forced young girls from the age of 14 to have sex with him after gigs and recorded the acts on his laptop. He would also threaten them that he would find them and sort them out if they told anyone. In May of 2011, Joanne went to the police again. She told a detective that Watkins was molesting a 4-year-old child, and he had admitted to her about a 12-year-old he had molested in Los Angeles. She said she had provided the officer with photographs of the 4-year-old Watkins had emailed to her, and she provided her mobile phone and laptop to supply evidence of a conversation with Watkins. All this evidence and reports that Joanne brought to the police were pushed aside because the police undermined her credibility because they said she was a sex worker and she had mental health issues.
How old do you think the girl was?
Maybe about 5 or 6. And I knew then that I wasn't wrong. And I thought, what can I do? The police have said that I can get harassment charges.
But she was not the only source of information. In March of 2012, a woman told the police Watkins may have sexually assaulted a 10-month-old baby. She gave police a description of images that could be found on his computer and the password, but the officers took no steps in investigating. You think with all this information from multiple sources that the police would actually do something, especially on a case this disturbing, but they didn't. It wasn't until they got a tip that Watkins may be importing drugs that the police actually decided to do something. The police finally took action in June of 2012 when they received information that Watkins regularly imported drugs from the US. They raided his home and took his laptop. You'd think this would be the final nail in his coffin, but he was actually released on bail. But then more people came forward about how he's planning on abusing another fan's baby. Then the police finally looked through the laptop and all the evidence and arrested him again in December of 2012 with his 2 female accomplices.
Ian Watkins sexually assaulted the 11-month-old in this London hotel, with the child's mother helping him. In total, Joanne Majelix alleges she reported Ian Watkins at least 8 times over 4 years to 4 police forces before his arrest.
Watkins pled guilty to a string of sexual offenses, including engaging in sexual activity with a child, attempted rape of a baby, and possession, making, and distributing indecent images. The evidence against Watkins was overwhelming. In court, prosecutors presented explicit text messages, photographs, and videos that Watkins had created and shared with others, showing him engaging in sexual acts with young children. Watkins was also found to have possession of extreme pornography, including images depicting the rape of an infant. He was sentenced to 35 years in jail. His 2 female accomplices also pled guilty and were sent to jail as well. One of the women, who was the mother of the victim, was sentenced to 14 years in prison. The other, who had helped Watkins film the abuse, was sentenced to 17. And yes, you heard that right. One of the accomplices was the mother of the baby that she would supply to Watkins to sexually abuse. And she also knew about it the whole time. When asked about his sentencing by a fan, he said he did all this for the mega lols. This guy clearly is one of the most disturbing humans that ever exists. To just think this whole situation was an entire joke to him. As for Joanne, the one that brought most of this to light, what happened to her? She was arrested. Yes, as part of the investigation, she was arrested in 2013. She was charged with distribution of images of children. And she said she did all this to trap Watkins. She went to court and the jury found her not guilty and cleared her of all charges, and she was released. The police officers involved massively mishandled the case. The commissioner said the 3 officers could face charges of gross misconduct, but they had all been since retired, so no actions were taken. While there's no evidence to suggest that Watkins' bandmates knew about his activities, the case did raise questions about the responsibility of those close to the perpetrator of the sexual abuse to speak out and take action to protect the potential victims. In fact, after Watkins was arrested, the band issued a statement on their official website expressing shock and disbelief at the allegations and emphasizing that they had no knowledge of his activities. The statement read in part, "Following charges made today against Ian Watkins, we find ourselves in a state of shock. We are learning about the details of the investigations along with you. It is a difficult time for us and our families, and we want to thank our fans for all the support as we seek answers." Following Watkins' guilty plea and sentencing, the band issued another statement announcing that they were disbanding and expressing their sadness and disgust at Watkins' actions. After nearly a year of coming to terms with our heartache, we finally feel ready to announce publicly that we have thought privately for some time. We can no longer continue making or performing music as lost prophets. Your love and support over the past 15 years has been tremendous, and we'll forever be grateful for all that you have given to us. As we look forward to the next phase of our lives, we can only hope to be surrounded by the family and friends that we know to be so important in life. The band wanted to go straight into a new band as soon as possible so they could sever themselves from any association of Ian Watkins. They enlisted ex-Thursday frontman Jeffrey Rickley on vocals, and their new band, No Devotion, was formed in April of 2014. The band went on a hiatus as Rickley returned to the band Thursday. Eventually, Rickley came back and they released their second album in 2022, and they are currently active. Following the conviction, Watkins was placed on the sex offender registry for life. His name was added to a list of people banned from working with children. Reports suggest that Watkins has been kept in isolation from other prisoners for his own safety, as child abusers and sex offenders are often targeted by other inmates. He has also been the subject to strict restriction on his communication with the outside world, including limitations on visits and correspondence. It has been reported that Watkins has been involved in a number of incidents while in prison, including an attack on a fellow inmate in 2015. In addition, there has been allegations that he has continued to engage in sexual activity with fans behind bars. In March of 2018, while in jail, he was strip searched, and in him they found a small cell phone. Yes, inside of him. You can only guess where he put it. He was using the phone to text women, as he still got hundreds of fan letters from women while in prison. He was going to use the cell phone to contact these women and manipulate them into giving him money while he was in prison. Possession of a mobile phone in prison is a criminal offense in the UK, as it's considered a breach of prison rules and potential security risk. He was charged with an additional 10 months of jail time. Although still in prison, he was able to release a couple more songs: La Armor, La Morgue, and Megalols. These were remixes that he probably wrote and recorded some of the music before his imprisonment and then just released them later. Watkins committed one of the worst child crimes ever recorded. His actions were so heinous that he was permanently banned from all music platforms and ultimately sentenced to a lengthy prison term. He will have to serve at least 2/3 of his sentence before he's eligible for parole, meaning he won't get out until sometime around 2033, when he is in his 50s at the earliest. In the end, Ian Watkins will go down in history as one of the worst singers ever. Not for his musical abilities, but for the monstrous and evil acts he committed.
The band were best known at the time for their gimmick of having two drummers, and are now they're best remembered for being fronted by a twatty wig paedophile.